morning. We're going to go ahead and get started. I'm Karen Mayfield. I know you all probably know me and are real sick of me by now via Zoom. This morning we're going to have another one of our manager all-day presentations. Brandon Page with SPT is going to present how to extend the life of your water and wastewater pipes, and he's going to get started in a minute. But we're going to start this morning. The reason that we're able to do these webinars and these seminars is because we have wonderful business partners who sponsor our chapter and provide the means for us to be able to provide these webinars and these seminars. And this morning we have two more of our diamond sponsors. We had three yesterday that presented presentations, and this morning we have Dina Smith with Crown Roofing, and we have Allie Huter with Professional Plumbing. And they're going to just say a few words. They've got a couple minutes to just say a few words about the companies so that when you're looking for some vendors, you will call them and allow them to bid. So Dina, you want to go first?
Sure, thank you. Thank you for having me this morning. And I kind of wish we all could have been together like normal, but hopefully one day we can get back there. So again, my name is Dina Smith. I'm the service manager with Crown Roofing. When at Crown Roofing, we offer services in re-roof, repairs, maintenance, new construction, and commercial. And we have a commitment, which is simple. Our clients come first. We have a long-term vision for Crown Roofing, and that's to become the premier roofing contractor in Central, South, and Southwest Florida. And each of our officers in our organization, they work as an owner-operator and ensure that we still remain a customer service based business with the highest quality of control standards, while still benefiting from the cost savings of being that larger scale roofing contractor. We currently employ over 600 employees. All of these are employees of Crown Roofing. We don't subcontract anything out. They're all of our in-house roofing operations. In each of our owners and employees of our organization, they've came to Crown Roofing with a unique set of skills and experience in the workplace. We've managed multi-million-dollar projects, and we have many years of roofing and corporate management experience. We strive to the goal is to reduce your overall cost of your roof life cycles by getting you the longest life on your roofing system. With that comes your regular roofing maintenances, your roof inspections, emergency services. That's all part of Crown Roofing's service agreements. And, we'd be happy to provide anybody that if you ever need any for a second opinion or anything. Many of you, I'm sure I work with, I deal with a lot of people with the CAI. It's a great chapter. And some of you I haven't, and it's understandably, there's a lot of other great roofing contractors out there. Some are, friends of mine. I just ask you to keep us in mind as a roofing vendor, roofing contractor. If you ever need anything as a second opinion or somebody to get out there a little quicker for you, we're here. We're a long-term, reliable, honest, experienced roofing contractor, and please call us at Crown Roofing.
Thanks, Dina. I really appreciate it. Allie, do you want to talk about professional plumbing?
Yeah, I love to talk about professional plumbing. They've been in business since 1985. It's the Whitman boys. They are family owned and operated, but they're not a small company. They can take care of all your needs. I was preparing today and I thought, I'm just going to read this because they guarantee 100% satisfaction. So I'm just going to read this about them. Plumbing problems can be scary, stressful, and even dangerous, but most plumbing problems can be quickly fixed or even avoided altogether if you have the right team on your side. Professional Plumbing and Design of Sarasota has the tools and experience to handle larger plumbing projects like condominiums, restaurants, retail stores, and factories. Our plumbing contractors work closely with local property managers to ensure their unique plumbing needs are met. In addition to having a highly trained, friendly team of plumbers, we guarantee top quality and workmanship standards on every job. With our upfront pricing policy and timely same-day service for emergencies, it's no wonder why so many people rely on us for their drain cleaning and plumbing needs. Our pro plumbers are so certain that you will be satisfied with the services performed by our team that we stand behind all plumbing work performed with a 100% satisfaction guarantee. If you're unhappy for any reason, we will redo your plumbing repair for free. So that's on their website. I just checked with Matt to be sure that I could say all this again, and he was 100% behind this. So that tells you what kind of a company they are. They've been around since 1985 for a very good reason. They are your local plumbing company. So there you go.
Wonderful.
So give them a chance to bid. Thanks.
Yes, yes, absolutely. If, again, if any of you are looking, any of you managers are looking for a roofer or a plumber, please call these companies and show your support, allow them to bid, because they are the companies that support our chapter.
Well, thank you, Karen. Thank you for having us today.
Yeah, thank you. And you guys are great. I appreciate you. So with that being said, we're going to get started. Brandon, if you want to pull your PowerPoint up, that would be great.
All right.
And again, everybody, as Brandon's PowerPoint is coming up, I just want to remind you that this is a 2-hour CEU, and please give us a little time to send you your certificate and to get your credits turned in. We're doing 3 of these in a row, and I have a part-time assistant who will be doing this. We will get them in plenty of time to get your license renewed. We'll get them in within the next few days. And also, if you do during the presentation have any questions, please ask it through chat. Don't raise your hand or anything because we won't see that. But if you ask through chat, Brandon has a staff person that is monitoring the chat area for him to answer questions. And with that being said, Brandon, I'm going to turn it over to you. And if you need me, just say my name and I'll be back.
Okay, thank you, Karen. You can hear me okay? Yes, thumbs up.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, so we'll get right into it. For the recording purposes today, this is Thursday, August 27th, 2020. And this CEU is titled, How to Extend the Life of Your Water and Wastewater Pipes. From this title, I hope that you are forming an assumption that we're going to be talking about piping and plumbing today. And it's how it works, what goes wrong with it, and some of the options that are available to fix it or to get in front of problems before they start. So the theme of this CEU is, number 1, general education. And then the purpose being to help you get a little bit more working knowledge of how plumbing systems work. And then we're going to compare and contrast towards the end of the presentation in the second hour, the differences between conventional pipe replacement or renovation and pipe life extension, or what's now being referred to as pipe rehabilitation. So with that, we'll get right into it. This is just a simple brief bio about me. Essentially, I'm the qualifying agent, which means I hold a bunch of different contracting licenses for a company called Aquam, and works throughout the country. And our area of expertise is in this kind of arena of non-conventional pipe rehab. So with that, I've had experience over the years, both in the plumbing trade and in general construction, specifically serving property managers, condo HOA high-rises, as well as a lot of various types of infrastructure from universities to hospitals. So that's my background. And moving forward, I wanted to start with some questions that will help to kind of set the stage for today. So in the CEU, to kind of give you an idea of what to expect, you're going to be learning about how multi-unit buildings, plumbing systems are designed to work. Truth be told, this applies to really all plumbing systems, whether we're talking about a residential home or we're talking about a high-rise building. This will apply to both living spaces like residences as well as commercial spaces. There's only slight variations in the nature of how a plumbing system is set up to work. But in the end, they're all fundamentally the same. Now, there's a lot of different types of infrastructure that serve us in our homes and buildings. The two that I'm going to be drilling down on is potable water pipe or drinking water lines and drainage pipe, which is the wastewater lines. You're going to be introduced today to three of the most common water and sewer drainage problems or the issues that arise with these two types of plumbing systems. And then in the end, the goal here today is to provide you with some valuable information on purely the practical steps that you can take to prevent unforeseen damage that inevitably comes with the passing of time and the breakdown of the materials that serve us and run our plumbing systems. So the two questions I told you about I'd like to start with today. You're welcome to use the chat feature to answer these questions. There is no real wrong or right answer per se. It's more or less kind of a temperature check to see what you might know to get your mind thinking about some of the subjects that we're going to be covering today. So my first question is this. Do you know what type of pipe was used to plumb your building's water and or wastewater pipes? So think here how you would maybe know an answer to this question. Again, feel free to use the chat and answer here. If you've ever been in a utility room or you've ever looked underneath, say, a sink lavatory cabinet behind the toilet, you would see piping coming out of the wall. On the drainage side, it might be plastic, or it might be copper, or it might be galvanized, it might be cast iron. On the water side, it could be copper or galvanized, it could be plastic. Another common place where you might see piping is at your water heater. You might see plastic or copper, maybe even galvanized pipe coming out of the wall to a water heater or boiler. If you're a property manager, you may have seen walls get opened, or you might have utility spaces throughout the building. You've probably been on the roof at some point and you've seen pipe through the building. So simple question, what type of pipe was used to plumb your building's water and wastewater system? Secondary question, thinking back over the last 24 months, what has been the most common pipe problem that you've encountered in your building? So whether you're a manager or you're part of an HOA, facilities director, whatever your capacity may be. If you think back over the last 24 months, it's good for everyone in the CEU to hear and to be able to see and read. So again, using that chat feature, feel free to type in, we've had problems with pinhole water leaks, or we've had issues with sewer backups, or cracked cast iron, or rodents escaping throughout the building. Who knows what it could be. It's interesting for people to see the wide range of problems that can arise, and also some of the more common things that happen and that people might have in common with one another. So today, a handout was included with this CEU. If you're filling out the handout today, know this, the purpose of the handout is really to give you kind of a reference point or something to go back to. In that handout, as you follow along with the slides that I'm going to be going through today, you're going to notice some words in red. So here's your bit of free advice on how to get an A and feel like a winner. And that is any of the words that are in red should line up with your handout for an answer to a question. So in our first part of the handout today, and for the purpose of the CEU, I like to use reference points for words. Oftentimes these are common words that we all use, but not everyone is totally familiar, believe it or not, in what these words actually mean and what they entail. So the first word today that I'd like to start with is the most basic of all, plumbing. So if you look up the definition online, you'll find a couple variations, but this is the one that I thought was the most suitable, the most basic, and most accurate, and that is that plumbing is a system of pipes, tanks, fittings, and other apparatus required for the water supply, heating, and sanitation in a building. So the two key words here that you would fill out in your handout is obviously pipes and sanitation. And if you think about this word sanitation, plumbing systems really are a modern marvel. Now we're familiar with them because they serve us every day. Every time we go to fill up a glass of water, We flush the toilet, we run a dishwasher, we turn on the shower for some hot water. Well, a lot of, at least for me, and even being in the plumbing system, I take plumbing for granted, unless of course my wife asks me, like she did last week, to change out the valve on the tub shower. So there's like a funny acronym with plumbing and plumbers, is that everybody else's plumbing works except the plumbers. I try not to let that be true for me, but you know, time and time again, I get wrangled into doing plumbing projects at the house. And so even I take for granted the conveniences of the plumbing system. And I had to pull apart a shower valve and change out a tub spout and this, that, and the other. But one of the things that, as I was working on it, I was reminded of is really the marvel that you can deliver clean water at a fixture and then take the wastewater away and it really not disrupt your life. You know, if you've ever done any traveling throughout the world, if you've ever done any humanitarian type work or seen any type of oppressed countries, one of the number one things that you'll notice outside of the obvious poverty is the lack of plumbing facilities. If you look at this picture in the background, this little picture kind of gives a snapshot of what a high-rise building looks like if you were to pull the walls and floors away and you could see the intricate network of plumbing that's concealed in the walls and in the floors and in the ceilings. There is a level of complexity with plumbing systems, though it follows a number of basic rules, basic laws. But the type of infrastructure that serves your building where you manage or where you live is pretty fantastic if you think about it. When you go to impoverished regions of the world, they do not have this. They do not have this system serving them. And a lot of the wealth and the kind of advanced technology that we enjoy today, at least in our country, has a lot to do with very basic systems like this being an everyday part of our life that, again, we kind of take for granted, but they're an essential piece and part of our existence. In this picture, you'll see there's basically, if you look closely, different sections of pipe. For example, this is a vent or a combination vent and drain pipe. This would be in the wall. And you actually see that it's behind a toilet that's hung on the wall. Same thing, here's a lavatory sink and there's some water piping coming into the back. The reason I asked this first question about, are you familiar with the kind of pipe that was used to plumb your building? Because I'd say 80+% of people, they aren't. Because most of the piping you don't see, right? You see fixtures. If you've ever gone to Lowe's or Home Depot, or if you've ever made your way into like a Kohler showroom, you've got all manner of fixtures, from simple, you know, lavatory faucets to these elaborate European stainless steel farmhouse, I know what you call it, $1,000 sinks, right? And faucets. Wide variety of things, but the fixture that you see, whether it's shiny and pretty, whether it's, you know, motion activated or manual, that's the end of the system. What we're going to be drilling down today on is the piping that serves those fixtures, so on drainage as well as water. Okay, in the CEU, I kind of have a standing rule whenever I do teaching or education or coaching, is that I like to start with the best first. So rather than saving the best for last, and I'll do my best to provide good content to the end, I like to start with what I think is the best right up front. So if you get nothing else out of the CEU, and I would even encourage you, you're going to see these words in red match some of the answers on your handout. But I would even draw this on the back of a piece of paper. If you're a visual learner, this will serve you well. And today you're going to walk away. If you've never really understood how plumbing systems work, this little analogy will help you a long way to understanding more than most of the people around you that haven't been exposed to this information. So the way I like to liken how a plumbing system works, this all originated from a question I got asked by one of my daughters. At the time, this has been a couple of years ago, I think she might have been seven or 8. So she's in that full-on discovery phase where everything is amazing and magical and exciting. And putting 2 and 2 together, she gathered that, you know, I work in the plumbing type of kind of craft or trade. And she started asking me, how does plumbing work? What does plumbing do? And so I told her this analogy. I said, well, plumbing works a lot like a tree. And we have got some beautiful trees in our yard, you know, some live oak, some palm trees. So We even have a mimosa tree, and it's neat because it blooms every year. And taking you through this process, let's start for our purposes with the idea of water systems. So we're thinking of clean water, water that you would fill a glass with and drink, the water that comes out the shower head when you take a shower, the water that's used to fill your washing machine when you wash clothes. This is referred to as potable water. Going to my analogy of the tree, this is how I explain it to my daughter, and I'll explain it to you the same way. We know that a tree has, at least for what we can see, a trunk that comes out of the ground. This is one main supportive member that comes up out of the earth, and it supports the branches, the twigs, the leaves, the fruit, if there is any. Think of the trunk as the main line. So every plumbing system, whether it's a home with one bathroom, or it's an elaborate, high-end mansion down by the water, or it's a high-rise building, they all have the same thing in common, except for hospitals, which have two. They have a backup system. There is one main branch line or trunk line that delivers water to a home or building. This is from Carrabba's, where you get Italian food, to the high-rise HOA that's on the beachfront, to a little bungalow house. Every single building or structure per the plumbing code is required to have a main trunk water line. This water line is going to come in underground, and it's coming from a centralized location on the property, where if you're on city water, there's a water meter. That's how you're charged for the amount of water that's used. Or like in our case, we actually have a well on our property. So there's no water meter. There's a pump that pulls water out of the ground. Either way, whether water is being delivered to you from a city municipal water system or from a well pump, it's going to come onto your property and come into your home underground through a trunk line. As you can see, as you make your way up the tree, you start having branches that appear. And this is exactly the way a plumbing system works on the water side underground. These lines, the main is going to come in, and it's then going to begin to branch off. And these branches are installed by a plumber when the structure is being built, and it's going to supply water ultimately to centralized zones like a kitchen, a hall bathroom, a master bathroom. It's going to go to your hose bibs. It's going to go to water heaters. So these branches are going to carry water to these centralized locations, and then they're going to break down. In the plumbing system, we refer to these branches as laterals, into supplying water to an end point in the system. So on a tree, we would call this twigs, right? It's the small little twigs that stick off. And these supply water to the actual fixture itself. In a plumbing system, a fixture is a lavatory sink, a shower head and or valve, a kitchen sink, a toilet. That's your fixture. It's at the end of the line. And you think of this like leaves or like fruit. So you have the plumbing fixtures themselves, the point of use into the system. So if you think about a water system, whether it's a home, if you were to chop this tree down and lay it on the ground, under your home, there is essentially a network like this. There's a main trunk line coming in. It branches out to a zone or a centralized part of the house or building, and then it's going to supply smaller lines up to the fixture, and then at the end of the system is the fixture itself. In a high-rise HOA, it's basically the same. It's just stacked on top of itself. So you have a main water line coming in underground, then it's going to come out of the ground in different locations in the building, and the section of pipe that goes up is literally just like a tree trunk. We refer to it as a riser pipe. It's going to go up, and then floor by floor, branches are going to come off, normally in the ceilings, and then come and drop down into individual, say, units in a multi-unit building. This happens all the way up to the top floor. In some instances, there might need to be a pump that's installed to help boost the pressure. But think of it like this. On the water side, the biggest diameter pipe that comes into the building is the main pipe. And the further that you get into the system, eventually till you end at fixtures, that piping is reducing in size. So the difference between water pipe and sewer pipe is this. Obviously, water pipe is clean and drainage pipe, sewer pipe is dirty, but water pipe is under pressure, meaning that there is a column of water that when you turn the fixture on, water instantly comes out so that you can use it. On the drainage side, it's the reverse. There is no pressure outside of atmospheric pressure and the exchange of fluid and air inside the piping system. So you think about, again, if I was to explain it, if you've ever gotten a shot, like a couple of years ago, I got injured and I had to go in to get my finger stitched up. And lucky me, in addition to get my finger stitched up, they said, have you had a tetanus shot? And I was like, I don't remember. So I ended up getting a tetanus shot in the middle of it, on top of the stitches. And I noticed when the kind of medical tech put the syringe into the bottle and she pulled back on the stopper, when she, stuck that tetanus vaccine or whatever it is in my arm and pushed it out, that as she was applying pressure to the stopper, it was pushing that medicine through the needle into my arm. That's the way a plumbing system works. A pump is pushing water all the time, just like the stopper on a syringe. So think of water, the water side as being pressurized, which it is. And there's minimal pressures that are required per the code so that you're not frustrated. If you've ever had the experience, especially if you've been in a high-rise building and you're up high in the building, every once in a while you have pressure problems where you turn a fixture on and water doesn't come out like at the speed you wish it would. Or if you've ever been in a neighborhood or at a building where they boosted the pressure and all of a sudden it went from like 50 PSI to like a fire hydrant. Those are all issues that happen with water pressure. So switching gears. Now I want you to think of this tree. We started at the base, we went up the trunk, we went out the branches to the leaves and ultimately to the fruit or to whatever flowering thing it is, depending on the type of tree you like. This is our good analogy for a water system. If you reverse this, think of this now for drainage. So a drainage system is just the reverse of a pressurized water system. Different piping materials, which we're going to get into in a minute, but the piping materials themselves on the drainage side are larger in diameter than, say, at a fixture. So whereas on a water line to a fixture, you might have this 1/2-inch copper serving the fixture supply of water. On the drainage side going away, you might have 1.25 inch copper. So think of it like this. You're standing like you were this morning, most likely at your master bath or hall bath. You're brushing your teeth, washing your hands, getting ready for the day. And as you're using water coming out of your fixture, out of your lavatory sink, that water you're using that's being discarded is being gathered at the bottom of the bowl into a drain. Once that water enters the drain, it's now, think of it in reverse, we're out here at the leaves or from the fixture, water begins to go into the drain. So on the drainage system, a separate piping system, water begins to make its way and travel from the smallest branched fixtures back into larger branches, ultimately making its way back to the trunk and then leaving the building. This is true for piping underground and the walls in a house as well as in a high-rise building. So think of it just kind of flip-flopped. All the water that you use, you flush a toilet, when your washing machine dumps water, this water is captured when you're inside the house and it's taken away, this network of piping, out of the building. Again, there's one main sewer line that leaves a building or a house or a restaurant, except for the exception being hospitals. Again, they'll have often 2 incoming water mains and also usually at least 2 exiting sewer mains, and sometimes more. But the idea here is you can think of a plumbing system working essentially in this fashion. Again, if you get nothing else today, this will help you know a lot more about how plumbing systems work, both on the water and the drainage side, and understand all of this piping, the trunk, the branches, the twigs, is concealed. Again, when I asked the first question, are you familiar with what type of pipes in your building? About the only way you would know what kind of pipe you might even have is if you looked at a water heater, again, or if you looked under a sink. That might not even be a good representation because 98+% of the pipe that serves your home, your condo, your building, whatever you manage, wherever you work, it's concealed inside the wall. The only thing you see again is the leaves or the fruit that's at the end of the line, and that's the fixture itself. Okay, so another definition. We'll see some words in red. Pipe. Definition, working definition for pipe, is a tube of metal, plastic, or other materials that is used to convey water, gas, oil, or other fluid substances basically from one point to another point. Again, the word to think about is sanitation. It's to do it in a way where the water, whatever it is not contaminated as it's being delivered from one spot to the next. In the background here of this picture, you'll see some various types of piping material. These are all water piping materials. I'm going to touch more on these in a minute, but you can see this is a braided supply line. There's brass. There's some type of PEX Warsbow, PEX, other brass. We have copper. These are all common types of piping that is used to supply water to a building. So some important information now. We're going to get into a little bit more nitty-gritty detail. We've started with the general basics of what plumbing is and what pipe is and how plumbing systems are generally designed to work. Now we've got some more information on the four most common types of piping materials that have been used in U.S. construction during the last 50 years. And this may span a little bit depending on where you are. If you go to California or if you go to the New England states, we might be talking more like 75 plus years. In Florida, this might be more the 30 to 40 year range as a general rule. So we have metal. Types of metal include ductile iron, galvanized, copper, and cast iron pipe. Now, I think you can see my screen. You can also see my picture. If you can't, in a minute, I'll stop my screen share and I want to show you some examples because show and tell is my favorite. So we have metal, and we'll talk more about these types of pipe in a moment. We have ceramic clay. So clay pipe, believe it or not, is a fantastic pipe used on the drainage side of a system outside, normally under earth, under landscaping. Clay is used both on the private side as well as for municipal, city systems. There's piping that's made out of cement on both the water and the drainage side. There are different types, most common being reinforced concrete and asbestos wrapped cement pipe. The asbestos is not in the ground. Then of course there's plastics. Most people would be the most familiar with these plastic pipes. They have these weird abbreviated names that stand for long chemical scientific titles. The common ones that most people have heard of is PVC. This is the white plastic that's used on all new drainage construction today. ABS is a black plastic. Cpvc has become very popular in Florida. It's a water pipe. It's similar to PVC in nature, but it's got a yellow stripe on it, holds higher pressures. There's PEX and HDPE. These are all different types of more poly-based pipes, more flex to them rather than being rigid. So important information here, introducing you to some of the most common piping used in the last 50 years. So now for some pictures and some useful fun facts. If your building was built before 1960, the most common type of water pipe used really in both residential and multi-story construction was galvanized steel. Galvanized pipe is actually a great pipe. It's super strong, holds high pressures, and when it was developed, was the latest and greatest thing that had ever been come up with. The issue with galvanized pipe is that when it was produced, it has like a shield coating on it, both outside and inside. And over time, what happens with galvanized pipe is the shielding is essentially worn away from water flow, as well as from minerals and corrosion and different things that are in the water itself. And what happens is once that coating is gone, the inside of the pipe is exposed to the water that's in the system. And water is a pretty fantastic substance. It's the kind of essential element for all life on planet Earth. And water has both life-giving capabilities, but also has a transformative power. Water changes things, right? And so when you have water that gets exposed to bare metal, it will start to break that metal down and try to balance itself. And one of the things that happens with galvanized pipe is this red rusty buildup. If you've ever seen, if you've ever been in a building or even seen staining on sidewalks, a lot of times in a high-rise building, if you've ever seen red water that comes out of a fixture or kind of discolored water, most of the time that's an indicator that you've got rust in the system, and that's coming from galvanized pipes somewhere. I've seen some really bad discolored water that, believe it or not, was still actually safe and potable to drink. Sometimes it can have a weird odor, but it's just weird when you have any kind of rusty water come out of a fixture, whether you're on a public system or a private system with a well. So just think galvanized pipe is problematic in the sense that when it breaks down, you can have discoloration. The other big thing that can happen, especially in a high-rise building, is a reduction of flow. So if you get a flow reduction where at one point many years ago, everybody had great water pressure, and now there starts being issues with water pressure. Sometimes, many times, what's happening is there's galvanized risers, trunk lines in the building, and they're getting scaled up. And piping is sized based on the number of fixtures in a building. So when an architect does his calculations for a building plumbing system to be designed, they size all the pipes based on the number of people that are going to live in the building and use water. What happens is that sizing is very important. Over time, if there is a buildup in the walls of the pipe, you're actually taking the original pipe and making it smaller. Buildup reduces the inside walls of the pipe, and therefore the flow and the volume of water that's intended to pass through it gets reduced, and you can have pressure problems at individual fixtures. If your building was built between 1960 and 1980, so coming a little closer to the present day, the most common type of water pipe used in multi-story construction was hard or soft copper. Two general types of copper. Copper was used everywhere in Florida during the big building booms between, say, the late 50s to the 1980s. And copper was the water pipe of choice. Actually, in the background, I've got a piece of copper here, which I'll show some pieces later. But two types, hard, which is rigid. Again, if you've ever been at a Home Depot or in some kind of a Ace Hardware or something, there's always a section with plumbing fittings. If you've ever seen these sticks of copper, that's hard copper. Soft copper comes in a coil, and this was used a lot in residential construction. And it literally comes rolled up almost like a garden hose, and you could roll it out and run it up to the fixtures wherever you wanted to supply water. So two types of copper, generally speaking, with different classifications. Okay, switching from potable water more towards drainage. If your building was built between 1940 and 1980, the most common type of sewer drainage pipe used in multi-story high-rises was cast iron. And believe it or not, there's a lot of high-rises that are using cast iron again today. High-end properties, by the way. Cast iron pipe is notorious for buildup, accumulating. Again, this is wastewater, so we're talking about larger diameter pipes than, say, the water lines. On the water side, your common pipes are 1 inch, 3/4, 1/2 inch. On the drainage side, your common sizes are 4 inch, 3 inch, 2 inch. And so as they build up over time, you get issues with reduction in flow. And cast iron is very widely used in Florida. We also have cast iron being the kind of pipe of choice today in hospitals, universities, again, high-rise buildings. And one of the things that engineers and architects like about it, why they keep using it, is it's quiet. So it's heavy. When wastewater is passing through it, believe it or not, the people that live above you, or if you're in a high-rise building and you manage a 10-story building or 20-story building, every one of those units, there's cast iron pipe both in the ceiling, in the floor, and in the walls. And when one person on the top floor flushes their toilet, that wastewater goes through the plumbing in their unit into a piping that's in the wall, and it drops down through the entire building, floor by floor by floor, through a trunk line, then to ultimately go underground and leave the building. So you can understand there's definitely a network where everyone's tied together when it comes to how drainage pipe works. And when you have drainage leaks or you have buildup in cast iron pipe, just a problem section in one area can be a problem for a lot of people because all the pipes are interconnected. In this picture on the top right, you can actually see this is a piece of pipe that was taken out. These are roots in the line, as well as just buildup and nasty, everything from rust to grease to soap to waste. It's just buildup on the walls of the pipe. You can obviously see this being a 4-inch pipe, that's probably been reduced to about 2-inch diameter. If your building was built after 1990, the most common type of water and sewer pipe switched from metals like steel, iron, and copper to various types of plastic. So plastic type kind of took over the marketplace back in the 90s. Then from plastics, there was kind of this move towards flexible oil-based pipes, and like HDPE and PEX. They've kind of been at the forefront now for many years. Kind of full disclosure, the good news is, you know, with technology, our ability to make materials that are lighter and more cost effective goes up, but we still haven't cracked the code on pipes that last forever. There are things being done that look promising, and there are improvements, but the main idea behind plastic pipes was it dealt with this natural process of corrosion that affects cast iron drain pipes, copper water pipes, galvanized, you know, water lines. The idea behind plastics was corrosion could be eliminated, but the problem with plastics is over time they are susceptible to a different set of problems where they can become brittle. So though plastics have been widely accepted as an improvement, there's a lot of instances now even where there's architects and engineers that are speccing buildings and homes to be built with some of these older materials, or now even hybrid materials where they're crosses between metals and plastics. All right, so now we're going to move into some of the more common problems associated with these types of pipes. We've talked about how plumbing systems are configured from a general sense, and then I've touched on some of the most common types of pipe that have been used, especially in construction here in Florida, over the past 50 years. We're now going to look at what are some of the challenges that these pipes face, what comes up, and kind of when does it happen. So the three most common types of pipe problems. You get a gold star if you can put into the chat feature what that is right there. In the background, you see I have this picture. If you know what this is, you get a gold star. Type into the chat feature what that is. Some people will know exactly what that is, and they'll want to also attach cuss words to their description of what that is, because if you've ever had one of these, you're in a tight spot, not fun. In a minute here, I'm going to show you some examples. We're going to talk about it in depth. So another word worth referencing, and that word is corrosion. Corrosion is the breakdown or destruction of a material, specifically or especially when it comes to metals, through chemical reactions. The most common form of corrosion is rusting, which occurs when iron combines with these two elements, oxygen and water. So again, I mentioned how water has this incredible miracle power to both support life, but it also has this power to transform things. Earlier this year, I had the pleasure of taking my wife and girls on one of my trips out west to the Grand Canyon. If you've never been there, you got to go. With COVID, believe it or not, there wasn't a lot of people there. It was awesome. But just staring at the sheer magnitude of the Grand Canyon and realizing that that was done by water is just fantastic. You can see the layers of rock, how they've been worn away, all the different colors. It's just absolutely incredible, mind-boggling. So water is this fantastical thing, and we try to harness water, and we've been able to do some fantastic stuff with water. We can get it to go from one place to the other place. That's essentially what a piping network is, whether that water is clean and safe to drink or whether we've used it and it's dirty. The piping that we use, and again, there's a wide variety. Interesting thing is, though we're trying to harness water and get it to go somewhere and serve our purposes, water still is doing its own thing. And water, if it's imbalanced, has this incredible capacity to pull from pipes what it lacks. So this is the kind of philosophical stuff that I just think is so cool. To kind of give my, what water does in Pipe for Dummies breakdown, think of it like this. If you take water and you strip it of its qualities, its minerals, this is a lot of times what's being done. Water gets stripped in a lot of ways of what it is when it's chlorinated and it's disinfected so it's safe to drink, right? We're afraid that it's going to have some kind of weird bacteria or some kind of contaminant that can make us sick. Again, if you've ever been to a third world country one of the big causes of death is, consuming non-potable water that's got waste in it. Feces is being one of the number one things from animals, from humans. But these bacteria that can get in water can be deadly. So, we kind of lean heavy on the chlorination side when it comes to municipal water. We're drinking maybe a couple stages below chlorinated pool water. I mean, it's pretty intense. But when water gets stripped of its qualities, what's amazing about it is when water passes through different materials, it has this ability, and I do not understand how, but it will pull from the pipe the things it lacks. A lot of what corrosion is just nature rebalancing itself. So whether it's the Grand Canyon or it's a piece of copper pipe, water is amazing. And so we try to get it to do what we want it to do, but it's still doing its own thing, whether it's running through PVC or HDPE or copper or galvanized pipe. Water isn't just being harnessed for our purposes. It's got kind of a will of its own, and it's always trying to rebalance itself, again, to support, I think, ultimately to support life. So, in metallic water piping, corrosion causes rust. It causes scale buildup, as well as biofilm to accumulate. And this results in the following things: water leaks, poor water quality, and lower water pressure. Going back here, I mentioned in the last screen, a couple screens back, did you know what this was? This is called a pinhole leak, the dreaded pinhole leak, which in Florida, most people who've ever had a high water bill and called out a leak detector or have ever had a flood in their house, the reason that it happened was because they had a pinhole leak. Okay, so I'm gonna try this. I'm gonna stop my share for a second. If you can see my screen, I've got in my hand a piece of copper pipe. Okay, this is a piece of 1-inch copper. If you look right there, see this? That's the real deal right there. That is a beautiful pinhole leak. Okay, so copper's cool, right? I think copper, people make jewelry out of copper, all this different kind of artwork. This is a neat piece of pipe. It came out of the ground. And if you look at it, it's got this neat kind of patina buildup, different colors. There's greens, there's browns, as well as the copper color. But you see this piece of this pinhole leak that's developed. And this was a doozy here. This leak was doing a couple of 100 gallons an hour. That will flood a unit, flood a house. It will send your water bill into the stratosphere. What's interesting about this little piece of pipe that I want to draw your attention to is right here, we have plumber's best friend. This is called a stainless steel clamp with a piece of rubber tubing. And guess what's underneath that stainless steel clamp and piece of rubber tubing? If you guessed another pinhole leak, you are correct. Because what happens with copper pipe is once a leak develops, the original leak is actually right here underneath this strap and band. And about 6 inches away, lo and behold, another one pulled out. Materials corroded away. I don't know if you can see inside the pipe. Probably not. You can kind of see that leak there. But what happens is the pipe wall thins from the inside as water's passing through day in, day out, hour to hour, week after week, year after year. And if there's any kind of pitting or there's any kind of spot in the pipe where water can begin to swirl, if a bit of corrosion builds up or biofilm hardens, a mineral deposit kind of calcifies, this water will then begin to kind of swirl and jet, and it will just slowly take that pipe away. Not to mention, if the water's imbalanced, which in some municipal areas, I won't say names, but around the country, there's been some communities where the water gets imbalanced because it's treated too heavily or not correctly, or there's a variety of reasons, that the water, again, it will pull the content of this pipe out of the pipe from the inside. So most pinhole leaks develop from the inside out. They wear from the inside, and eventually once it thins, the pressure eventually pops the leak. And now, again, pressurized water, the water never stops because it's under pressure, okay? Once a pinhole leak starts, it doesn't stop until you turn the water off. Over the years, I've had people talk to people that on the phone, they're like, I have water coming up in my house. We have water cascading down the units in our high rise. And my question is always, do you know where the water shutoff valve is? So water shutoff valves look like this. These are more common ones. This is a small 3/4 inch valve. It's a quarter turn valve. To shut it off, I just turn the valve. If you don't know where this is at on your condo high rise, unit by unit, riser by riser, you need to go find it. You need to call a plumber, like the one that's in our CEU today. You need to call them, somebody like them, or a construction person or a handy maintenance guy, and find out where these valves are at. Because if you get one of these, you better know where this is at, or your life is going to get complicated. And the insurance claim is going to kick up like the speedometer in your car, out of control. So I want to show you some real life examples of copper pipe and what pinhole leaks look like, just for show and tell fun. Okay, bear with me as I go back here. Okay, let's see, we were here. All right, so we've got some problems that occur with corrosion in water lines. Now we're gonna switch from water to sewer. Okay, in metallic sewer pipe, corrosion, again, we have corrosion in the water system and in the drainage system. Corrosion also causes leaks. It also causes scale, but it causes, rather than biofilm buildup, which does happen in drain lines, the big culprit is grease buildup. So grease gets into a plumbing system the same way it gets into your body, right? So when you eat greasy foods, there's a byproduct that comes from that that can cause issues with your digestive system, and obviously, you know, arteries getting clogged up. Plumbing systems, same thing. You can kind of tell what people tend to cook at their house, if they fry a lot of fish or they fry a lot of chicken, or if they're health nuts and eat vegetables and bake salmon. You know, their drain lines tell the story. You can literally put a camera in a pipe and tell, wow, these people really love fried chicken. And these people, you know, they are, you know, the vegetarians and they're juicing. I don't know, because one system's very, very coagulated with grease and one system's, you know, relatively clean. In a drainage system, corrosion causes these three main things: cracking, slow drainage, right? Means the drains that you run in the sink and for some reason now it's not going down, or you flush the toilet and it kind of starts to back up. And then blockages, or the word that plumbers, contractors, industry people like to refer to as a stoppage. So again, think of a drainage system like a water amusement park. If you've ever gone to a water park, say you went to SeaWorld or took your kids or grandkids, and you've ever gone down a slide, years ago, I'm trying to think if it was Hurricane Irma, the one everyone was super freaked out about, where everybody left the state. Well, we bailed out and we drove to Tennessee. And we stayed with my mom's mom for like 3 days, and we couldn't take it anymore. So we're backing up. We're either going back to the hurricane or we got to go somewhere else. You know, we'll have lunch or dinner, but we can't stay here anymore. We're losing our minds. So we went down the road and stayed at a water park in Sevierville, and it was awesome. It was filled with water slides. We had an absolute blast. And they had these huge slides that you could get in double seaters, and it's like almost like a giant half pipe. Absolute blast. And I use this picture to tell you this is how a drainage system works. It's basically like a giant slide network in your home or building. So you think about it like this. In a water system, you can drive water straight up in the air if you have enough pressure. If you've ever taken a garden hose and turned it on, water will come out, right? It's just comes straight up and out until the pressure decreases, it'll come down. In a drainage system, again, you don't have pressure in the same way coming from a pump. So what you have in a drainage system is this word called fall. So if you can imagine, this is level. If I tilt my arm from one side to the other, or I take a pencil and I tilt it, you know, on an angle, that angle in a plumbing system is called fall. And basically, fall inside of a plumbing system allows water to drain from a fixture, lower through the system, and carry its way out. So think of a slide. On the drainage side, when you flush a toilet, all that waste leaves your property, your condo, your high-rise, because it's going through a systems of pipe that are gradually dropping and or vertically dropping straight down. So thinking of it that way, this corrosion that's in this drainage pipe, I want to draw your attention to. This is actually a piece of pipe that came out of a building in San Diego. I found this in a dumpster. These guys were on site, these contractors were working, and I was like, look at that piece of pipe. That's a real piece of pipe from the field. This was actually, I believe, a section of vent pipe that air passes through to supply air to the drainage pipe. But you can see like literal layers of corrosion, layers built in. The pipe wall is out here. It's only about maybe 1/8 of an inch, 3/16 of an inch thick, but you've got almost 1.5 inches or more of buildup on the walls of this pipe. You can see water and waste is not going to flow through this. Toilet paper is not going to go through this. Wipes are definitely not going to go through this. Air barely goes through this. So you can understand when pipes inside of a building start to look like this, there's obvious problems associated with that. You can see why there would be issues. Is this anyone's fault? Not really. I mean, people want to fry chicken or they want to eat, vegetables. That's kind of their deal. These pipes were designed to move waste out of the building. But it's just like your bodies with enough time, nature has a way of changing things. It has an effect on things. So just like our bodies, if they're not maintained, they break down. Pipe is the same way. Eventually, everything turns back into some other form. So when a building's plumbing system, water or wastewater, along with the building starts reaching about 25, 30, 40 years of age, this kind of corrosion and buildup is fairly typical. It's normal. Okay, so an important question. When my pipes start to leak, what are my options? At this point, we're going to get kind of into the nitty-gritty of our presentation. I'm going to go back to the slide. My apologies. In the background here, this is a piece of cracked cast iron and the wall jackhammered open. If you've ever had this experience, not fun. So now we're going to start to talk about the options that are available when pipes start to leak. Again, when a pressurized water line leaks, the water never stops until you turn off the supply to the building or to the unit. When a drain line leaks, it's super frustrating because guess what? Drain lines only leak when water's passing through the pipe. Most of the drain pipe in a building is empty. Most of the day, there is no water in it. There's just air in it. Water and wastewater does not enter a drainage pipe until you use water or someone in your building uses water above you or below you. When a pipe is cracked, water passes through it. Say someone dumps a sink or a washing machine, a huge volume of water will pass through that pipe momentarily, and then it will be out of the system. If the pipe is cracked or has a hole, what's frustrating about drain line leaks is just a little bit of water might come out. So if you've ever been in a unit where there's this odd reoccurring wet spot on the drywall or the ceiling where the wall starts getting soft, or over time it's getting stained, a stain starts growing on the floor, but then it seems to stop and you'll go touch it, it doesn't even feel wet, that's a big indicator that that's not a pressurized water leak, that's a drain line leak. Because that drain is dumping water out into the system only when a fixture is being used and water's passing through that pipe. So you figure if you dump your tub and 50 gallons of water go through the drain, let's say maybe 1.5 gallons of water comes out a crack somewhere and runs down through the wall two floors to a unit where it stains the wall. Everybody's scratching their head. Well, you're not going to see that water show up again until that tub gets used. And if somebody only likes to take a bath on Saturday nights or on Monday afternoons or whatever the case may be, that fixture can be a hard leak to track down because it only gets used intermittently. Okay. How are we doing on time? All right, we're about 1 hour in, which this is a fantastic time to take a little maybe 2-minute break. What I'm gonna do for all of you that need to take a bathroom break or shuffle your notes, let's take a break for say 2 or 3 minutes here. If you wanna go run and get a drink of water, we're gonna then switch gears, and this is kind of the second half of the presentation today is gonna be looking at the differences between how to conventionally repair pipe and how to do non-destructive replacement. While we take a break here, I'm gonna go to the chat feature and look at some of the questions that are popping up. So go ahead and we'll start here in a couple of minutes.
Okay. And do you need anything from me, Brandon? Are you okay?
I think I'm good.
Okay. Well, I'm still here, so just know that.
Okay. I think I'm gonna take a run through some questions real quick while everybody takes a short break.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, so good questions. Take one more minute here. We'll get going here in a second. Okay. A couple of minutes passed. Hopefully you've had a chance to get a drink, get a snack, bathroom break, reset your brain. I hope you're not checking out or nuking out. I know this is a lot of information. Plumbing may or may not be the most interesting thing in the world to talk about. But if you're a property manager or you live or work in an HOA high-rise, I hope this information is useful for you as, thank you, as something that helps you have a better grip and understanding on how the buildings you live in or work in are function when it comes to plumbing. I had some funny comments in the chat feature when I asked about what was the pinhole leak. Someone said a bullet hole. That's funny. It does kind of look like a bullet hole. I always kind of thought they looked like a drill hole, like you took a little like a drill bit, drilled a hole in the pipe. Someone mentioned too, like why do they look concave? It looks like they pushed out. It's because the water pressure, when you get a pinhole leak, the water will actually, usually the pinhole leak starts really small, like a pinprick. But because again, it's under pressure, it will actually, once it starts to leak, the water pressure coming out of the pipe will actually cut away at the walls of the pipe. And it actually looks like it's been punctured. It's actually because the water is spraying out and carving away at the copper. So that's a good question. So we've got some participation. We'll go ahead and get back into it now. There's some requests for copies of this. I'm not sure if the video feed is being recorded. We'll have to look after the fact. But of course, you have the handout information. And I want to let everyone else know. We're also going to make some time here at the end for some questions, should you have any. So you're more than welcome to type those into the chat feature or just write them down or hold them to the end. I'll make sure to give some time to answer some questions about any of this information we're covering. So switching gears now for the next 40, 45 minutes, what we're going to talk about is the fundamental differences between repairing pipes conventionally when they have problems versus using some of the methods that are emerging with non-destructive pipe restoration, renovation, rehab, okay? I think you'll get a lot out of this. at least from an informational point of view. Okay, so giving a working definition, or at least a point of reference for conventional pipe replacement. If you look here on the left, you'll take a look at, we have a contractor or a maintenance man or someone here that's maybe looking for a leak or attempting to replace some pipes. You'll notice what is the one thing that stands out about this picture, at least to me, is holes. Again, the piping is inside the walls, right? It's in the ceiling, it's under the floors. And when it goes bad, getting to a leak or a bad section in a pipe is one thing, but when you start having to look at a fundamental overhaul or replacement, repipe of a plumbing system, you have holes. So picture yourself standing at any point in your building, whether you manage it or you live in it. You can do this with your home, right? You're standing there and think to yourself, everything that's physically between you and any failing pipe that's in that building, to get to that pipe, the walls, the ceilings, the floors must be cut open and removed in order to tear the old pipe out and install a brand new one. Then that's just kind of the first level of trauma. The real kicker, right, the insult to injury is once you've actually opened the wall and got to the bad pipe and you've taken it out and put a new one in, then you've got to put everything back. So it's remodel costs, it's the disruption that oftentimes carries with it the biggest load and frustration, both financially and then just kind of like psychologically. You know, people, it's traumatic to see your place get tore up, whether it's your house, the building you manage. It's stressful for everyone. And believe it or not, it's even stressful for the contractors doing the work. I always have asked myself, what must it be like to be, we're watching this special on these ER doctors the other day. And these are some pretty unique and special people, especially these people that do like trauma injuries or do heart procedures. I don't know how your brain has to work, but I would think that there is like a high level of stress that would accompany cutting someone's chest open, right? Sawing their rib cage in half and opening it up and holding their heart in your hands. That takes a special kind of smart, gifted person to be able to do that kind of work. But in a like manner, that's kind of what plumbers, contractors, these repipe specialists, people that do this kind of work for a living, that's in essence what they're doing with a building. Now, you can do a terrible job and wreck the place, or you can do kind of a clean job. But the point is still the same. Stuff's got to get cut open. What you see on the surface has very little to do with what's inside the wall or under the floor and is at the real root of the problem. So another kind of working definition, or at least a reference, when we compare conventional pipe replacement to non-destructive pipe restoration, this is the definition that I like to use. Non-destructive pipe repair or pipe renovation is when you utilize the latest in some form of cured-in-place pipelining. And the little kind of abbreviated acronym for that is CIPP. It stands for cured-in-place pipe. Various products and epoxies, coatings that are designed to rehabilitate original water and sewer pipe. And the whole premise or objective is to do it without causing destruction, disruption, or extended downtime. So making a repair to a bad pipe usually requires some type of destruction. It's going to require some kind of disruption, right, to the property, meaning that you can't use that particular bathroom, or you can't use that unit, or you can't go into that part of the building because the plumbing is shut down, right? No water comes out the faucets because it's off. Nothing can be flushed because the pipes are open. And what this leads to is often referred to as downtimes, okay? So everybody wants to mitigate their downtimes. If you've ever had the pleasure of remodeling your kitchen, you quickly realize how much you love your kitchen when you can't even walk across the kitchen to open the refrigerator because everything's torn apart. So downtimes are oftentimes a big factor that, again, it's kind of adding the insult to the injury of the problem. Is remodel is a big component part of piping going bad. Okay, so I'm going to introduce you now to some of the newer technologies that exist for pipe rehabilitation. My goal here is not to try to showcase any one version. There's a lot. Case in point, there's a wide variety of vehicles on the road, right? We've got gas and diesel powered cars and trucks. And now we have the advent of like electric cars that really work. I mean, some of these electric cars are pretty cool. I was looking at an investment in a new company that's going to be competing with Tesla that's making full-on electric, like 18-wheeler rigs. I mean, it's totally awesome. I mean, the amount of power that these things have is amazing. And this is a good thing, right? We like technology when it accentuates our life and makes it better. And so technology and these new products and these new services that are entering the marketplace and continuing to expand, none of them are a silver bullet. And so the real question is, which one is the right fit? And that has everything to do with the nature of the problem and the goals that someone has when it comes to how do I want to address this? So we talk about pipe rehabilitation here. In this picture, I've got two sections of pipe. It's actually the same section of pipe, believe it or not. But this pipe is actually turned on its side. This is a piece of cast iron, and the bottom of the pipe is out. This typically happens over time on a horizontal drain line that's under a slab of a home or a building. And over time, because the water, like a slide, all the wastewater rides in the bottom of the pipe. When you flush the toilet, that wastewater is going to ride in the bottom half of the pipe. If that pipe really starts to corrode, that bottom section of the pipe will eat away, disappear. And you've got waste and sewage going straight into the ground, and the ground coming back into your pipe. On the right here, we have a section of pipe, same piece of pipe, that has a cured in place epoxy-based liner that's been installed. And believe it or not, this section that's totally gone can be spanned because pipe lining allows you to literally place a pipe within the old pipe. So here are some applications. Again, there's a lot of versions of this. They're all fairly similar. It's kind of, you know, not to like cheapen it because it really is a marvel, but think of it like this. You can buy tires for your car, right? And you can buy from whatever 3 or 4 major manufacturers. And the only question is, do you want your tires to be big or small or narrow? Or do you want to have tread? Do you want it to be rated for snow? All the companies make all the same kind of versions of these tires. So a lot of these products that are hitting the marketplace, a lot of different manufacturers, not just from the United States, but all over the world, from Finland to the Middle East to Australia, they're producing different versions of these products. And they're all fairly similar. And every year or so, somebody makes a big leap or advancement in the epoxy or the cure time or the way it's installed. On the drainage side, cured in place pipe lining is designed for non-pressurized pipes. So that's sewer pipe, that's rainwater pipe, storm pipe, any pipe that's not under pressure. The applications range in pipes from 1.5 inches, which is like the piping leaving your sink in the wall, to 96 diameter. This is massive pipe that's running under the interstate or in a major city like Boston. So they have liners built to rehabilitate all sizes of pipe. In Florida, the most common pipe lining done is with piping ranging from about 2 inch to about maybe 8 inch in diameter, because that's the typical drainage pipe that's inside of a home or high-rise building. Most manufacturers today of these products give a 10-year warranty. And most installers give something like a 10-year labor warranty. So why does that matter? Originally, the warranties were crazy. People were doing lifetime warranties, 100-year warranties, 50-year warranties. It's kind of now, over the last couple decades, it's kind of, I think, settled into the industry standard, which is about 10 years. If you think about this in context, this is pretty common for plumbing, by the way. The average water heater lasts about 10 years. The average fixture lasts about 10 years before it starts corroding or leaking. I don't know if 10 is just the magical number, but industry-wise, for whatever reason, that's kind of what's settled in. If you put this in perspective, if you were to build a brand new home on a lot in a new subdivision, the piping that they're going to use to plumb that home or high-rise building is going to carry a 1-year manufacturer's warranty, believe it or not. Now, this doesn't tend to be an issue because most newly manufactured products, with construction defect litigation, it's got to last at least 10, 12 years if you look at the fine print. But when it comes to plumbing materials, most manufacturers only offer a 1-year warranty. And if there is a problem, let's say a new piece of pipe is installed and it fails, they're always going to point at the installer. They're going to say it was the contractor's fault. Our pipe is perfect. We manufacture gazillions of miles of this. It's the installer's fault. As far as the life expectancy, the estimated service life at a minimum for these various cured in place epoxies is 75 years. The expectation for the lifespan is actually much longer than that. And the reason for it is these epoxy-based materials have their roots or their origins in other industries like aircraft, different types of manufacturing, chemical productions. And so though lining has only been around now for really in small diameter pipe the last 15-ish, 20 years, in larger diameter pipes it's been around about 30 years. But for small diameter pipe like we would use in our homes, our buildings, it's about 20 years. The epoxies that are being used today are far superior to some of the ones that were originally hitting the marketplace. But again, these epoxies, they didn't originate in plumbing. They come from medical, they come from space aircraft, they come from other industries. So the point of reference for their life expectancy is really based on that. If anyone tells you that the pipe's going to last for 500 years, it hasn't been in existence for 500 years. It hasn't been in existence for 50 years. So the estimated service life is truly a speculation, but that's based again on other industries. Pipe rehab for pressurized lines. So believe it or not, on the pressurized side, there are coatings that are available for water lines. Now, again, there is no such thing, at least not yet, as a silver bullet. But on the pressurized side, there is processes, just like on the drainage side, for this corrosion and buildup that accumulates to be removed. And then for a coating to be installed, there's a lot of ingenious ways that people have come up with ways to do this. But on the water or the pressurized side, this also would apply to gas lines and chiller lines, say on AC systems, kind of getting outside of conventional plumbing. But there's a lot of other applications as well, thinking of pipe. But the common ways that these coatings are installed in pressurized pipe are actually blown in with air pressure. It's actually the system's drained, heated, and then pressurized with an epoxy that's pushed through. A lot of industry people call it gooing the pipe. It's almost like painting the pipe, if you could think of it that way. There's other applications where coatings can be sprayed on with like glorified paint guns or sprinkler guns, sprinkler configurations that go in the pipe. There's also tools for coating pipe where it can actually be brushed on, literally like you're painting a wall, like you're applying, again, it's not paint in the sense it's epoxy, so a lot more structural integrity. But the idea is there's a process different than on the drainage side, but that works on the water side. Again, some of the benefits are pressurized pipes are a candidate. Cost and time is the big factor, right? Being able to do this faster than a conventional repipe. Lots of pipes, like I mentioned, water and gas are candidates. Chiller are candidates. On the water side, as a general rule, it's larger diameter pipe. So we're not talking about the smallest pipe in the house that goes to a kitchen sink. Think riser pipe, main pipe inside of a high-rise building, sprinkler lines. Pipe that's essentially going to be about 1.5 inches and bigger is typically a better candidate for these kind of coatings. Okay, so some of the advantages of pipe rehab. In most instances, depending on the product that's applied, if you're looking at rehab versus replacement when pipe is going bad, in most cases, when you factor in the cost of remodel, you're going to save about 50%. I know a lot of people find that hard to believe, but when you're talking about pipe rehab versus conventional pipe replacement, it's not one for one. Yes, you can cut a wall or floor open, take an old pipe out and put a new pipe in. The new pipe is relatively inexpensive, but it's the getting the hole opened and then putting everything back so it looks like it never happened that is where the cost incurs. In most instances, a pipe that's rehabbed can be done in about half the time that it would take to conventionally rip the pipe out, replace it, and remodel. The advantages have to do with situations where you actually can't dig it up. So there are instances with the way a building is built with decorative finishes. I mean, I don't know if you've ever had a neighbor, or maybe you're someone that has real fancy finishes in your home or condo unit, or you manage units like this where there's marble, there's special wood, there's special materials that have been brought in from, you know, the other side of the world to make this place elaborate. There's instances where there's heavy structures like fountains, like statues, like columns that are on top of the pipe or the pipe is running through it, and you literally can't dig it up. This is what drove the innovation behind pipe rehab. Is there are just situations where it's not feasible to dig it up without causing so much destruction that it, you know, it just doesn't make cost-effective sense. One of the nice things about rehab is that the pipe that is rehabilitated, pipe within a pipe or coating inside the pipe, in most instances, the velocity or the flow of water is increased. So because the pipe is cleaned and coated, again, thinking back to like a slide, one of the benefits is you'll oftentimes get an increase in pressure or at least an increase in volume on the water side, and a lot better flow on the drainage side, because now you've got a slick pipe versus this crusty kind of rough walled pipe. Again, advantages: disruption and downtime is minimized. The number one benefit outside of the cost savings and time saving is going to be just avoiding destruction in general. And then, of course, there's going to be situations that are so complex that you want another option besides digging it out. Okay, let me look here. Now, before we go on, I'm going to stop for a second, and I want to do a little demonstration. Again, I hope you get, I did try to save something worthwhile here. So I hope you're not getting sleepy. If you take a look at my screen, hopefully you can see me. I've stopped the share. I want to show you some example pieces, all right? I love show and tell. I'm a visual learner. So I like to see things and touch things. You can tell me about it. You can give me definitions. That's good. I'm grasping it, but I want to see it. So I want to show you some examples of old cast iron drainage pipe. So this is a piece of 4-inch cast iron, okay? This is the actual pipe wall. You can see it's silver because it was cut with a chop saw, so it's nice and clean, right? This, what you see in the bottom, that's just rust and corrosion in layers. So this was a piece of, again, horizontal pipe that you can see buildup accumulated in the bottom. So this is a 4-inch diameter pipe. This is your most common sewer and drain pipe, right? This is what's under your house. This is what's in the wall. Big, long sticks of this run all through your property, okay? And you can see if this was originally intended to be 4 inches in diameter and open and clear, if you've got half the bottom of the pipe sealed off with an essentially concrete, I mean, that's basically what this corrosion does. It gets so hardened from scale and this process of being wet and dry and wet and dry that it actually builds up layers. And then you can see how this would be more difficult for waste and water, especially when you add paper products. Heaven forbid you flush wipes down a drain, right? You can see how they'd have a hard time getting through the system. And when these block up, right, if this gets restricted and blocked, you have a stoppage. When you have a stoppage, this is what's taking place. The plumbing system is having a heart attack. Okay, so I try to use word pictures that paint a reality. If you've ever had heart complications or yourself had a heart attack, or you know someone that's had a heart attack, my father, his wife recently, or well, a couple of years ago, had chest pain. They rush her into the emergency room. She's got something like 4 or 5 arteries, you know, right around the heart blocked, like 90+% blocked. And they're trying to figure out what they're going to do. Is it emergency open heart surgery? She's like on the cusp of having a heart attack. All the signs are there. They're giving her nitro and all this other stuff. The idea is that's your heart's, you know, system for pumping blood. If the arteries in your body get restricted, it reduces the flow, but the heart keeps pumping, right? And if the heart can't pump blood and it goes to pump, a heart attack is essentially that. The lines are blocked, the heart's trying to pump, and you have system shutdown. This is a piece of 3-inch cast iron, another common piece of pipe that you would see in a building. You can see the buildup in this one, very rough. If you could touch this, you would feel, it almost feels like rock. Now, these are dipped in lacquer, so I'm not actually touching nasty sewer pipe. But for illustration purposes, you can see, again, as this buildup increases and gets thicker and thicker, and the size of the pipe is reduced, what instantly happens is at some point, something is passing through that system that can't make it through that opening, and it stops. When a plumbing system backs up, this is what tends to happen. Drains start to gurgle. So if you're in a building and you hear your drains gurgling, if they don't back up and flood, that's good, but that gurgling, it's a warning sign, okay? If you go to dump a sink or you go to flush the toilet and it kind of bounces and it doesn't seem to drop like it should, that's a warning sign. It means that system is fighting to get the fluid out and let air exchange. When you have a stoppage, most people can attest to what this is like. You've got the toilet fills up and it overflows. The big indicator that there's a mainline stoppage in a building is you get wastewater starts coming up in a tub. So usually a tub or a shower, that drainage fixture is at the lowest point in the system. So if you flush a toilet up here or run water up here at 3 foot high in your unit, and then down here at your toilet, water, or at your tub, water starts coming up, that's a sign that the main trunk line, going back to our tree analogy, is blocked somewhere in that system, and it's literally filling up with water. So I can take this glass, and if I begin to fill it with water, if I fill it up to the brim, I'm good, right? I've got a full glass of water to drink. But if I keep filling and filling and filling, and it fills up, it will overflow. A drainage system works the same way. It can only hold so much water. It's meant to move water, not to hold water. So if it blocks and it fills up, then that wastewater starts to show up in your unit. Or even worse, well, depending on your perspective, in somebody else's unit, right? So what happens in a high-rise building many times is that there will be a blockage somewhere at the ground level or near the first or second floor in a vertical piece of pipe. But then the person on the first and second floor has no problem. But the person on the third floor, where the blockage is between the third and the second floor, all of a sudden their drains start backing up. And this can get real out of hand because if the people on 5, 6, 7, and 8 all decide to dump their washing machines and take showers, all that water is coming up in unit 3 because it's gone through the system and it can't go any further. And since the drainage system's not under pressure, it's now backing up. Okay, so what do? We want to take this piece of nasty pipe, these pieces of pipe, we want to get this garbage out, and we want to get it to working again. So there's a lot of different ways contractors do this now around the country. This is an example of a pipe cleaning tool. This is called a chain tool. It's actually put on the end of a device that's can run high RPMs, and it spins in the pipe. So this would be put into a pipe, it's spun around, it's going to break this debris and buildup off of the pipe walls where it can be flushed or vacuumed out. This can be done in vertical pipe, underground pipe. It can be done in drainage pipe. It can be done even in pressurized water pipe. There's a lot of various pipe cleaning tools like this. And once this buildup and debris is removed, you get a piece of pipe where basically it's being restored back to its original diameter. When pipe is lined, you have to think of it like this. You don't want to line nasty pipe. When a liner goes into a pipe, or if we're going to apply a coating to rehab a pipe, you want this buildup to be out. So the pipe itself is rigid, and so we want the buildup removed so that the liner or the coating that goes in, so that whoever that installer is can make sure that it adheres to a clean pipe. I'm going to show you now one version of a cured in place liner. So I've got some sample pieces here. This white product that you see right here, this is a piece of felt liner, okay? This is 4-inch in diameter. This is a typical piece of liner that would be used to rehabilitate a drain line. There's actually versions of this now that are suitable for pressurized water pipe as well, water mains. Requires a different felt and different epoxy. But, you know, per the licensing and governing bodies that control and regulate what's safe, what's not, there's different products with certifications for these different applications. On the drainage system, this is one of the most common products used. A camera would be used to measure a section of pipe. So take in point, I have this piece of clear PVC pipe that I brought as an example. I take this with a tape measure and I measure it. This one is actually 18 inches. But let's say I've got a drainage system that's in a building in the walls and it's 75 feet long, or under the building it's 52 feet long. A contractor can go in, they can make an inspection with the camera, and they can take a measurement. Then based on that measurement of the pipe in question, they can then build a liner, cut it to length and specification. This piece of felt, once it's wet out with epoxy, is going to become the new piece of pipe inside of the old pipe. How this is done is as an epoxy is mixed. And now there's one part epoxies, but traditionally there's been a two-part epoxy that would be mixed together. It goes through a chemical reaction and it begins to heat up. That epoxy would be poured into this felt liner, and just like someone might roll out a pie crust or a pizza dough, they roll that epoxy back and forth. And there, again, there's a variety of ways this can be done, but the point is that this liner is fully saturated with epoxy. Once it's saturated, it's ready to go into the pipe. The issue is it's flimsy, right? It's flexible, and it's now wet with epoxy that's heating up. What goes inside the liner is a bladder. Okay, so again, variety of ways this can be done. This is a section of bladder. It is composed, this one, of three parts: a rigid strap that can be pulled on, a rubber bladder that looks a lot like a bicycle inner tube, and then a protective plastic. This is basically prepared. I have one that's prepared here. It's all ready to go. And what you have on one end is a pull strap, and on the other end is an air shock. This would get slipped inside of this piece of felt liner that's been wet out with epoxy, and then it would be slipped into the hosed pipe. So if you look at the original piece of pipe, this piece of felt would be slipped inside like this, and it gets positioned wherever the technical crews would want it. So once it's in place, it's then inflated with air, and as it's inflated, it expands to the walls of the pipe on the inside. It then goes through a process over the next 2 to 3 hours, depending on the process being used. There's now actually procedures. A bunch of manufacturers are releasing versions of this where they can cure the liner, cause it to cook off faster using UV light, just like when you go to the dentist, if you were to get a tooth, a cavity filled. They're now using epoxies that will cure instantly to UV light. Very, very cool. So rather than a 2 or 3 hour cure time, you're looking at maybe 10 or 15 minutes. Once the liner has been cured, the bladder gets pulled out of the liner, and then you have this host pipe that now is a new pipe inside of the old. I brought a piece of cast iron. This is your typical black old cast iron 4-inch that's been lined. If you look here, this is a piece of liner installed in the pipe, and I brought this piece today to show you that it's perfectly slick and smooth. It's fully adhered to the walls of the pipe, and if you look closely, this particular epoxy is kind of a turquoise color. Again, there's manufacturers all over the country that do purple and red. The color is really not important. It's more or less used to work like a dye to show that the liner is fully saturated. This is a piece where the actual bottom was cut out. This is meant to show that even if the pipe is missing, like in one of the pictures I went back to earlier, it doesn't matter. The liner can cure off in the pipe. You're essentially putting a new pipe inside of the old. So I want to show you that kind of as a short demo, that you're taking a piece of pipe that was in this condition, that buildup is being removed, and when it's done, it's like this. So the benefits to this are that the wall didn't have to get opened up, the floors didn't have to be tore open, and there wasn't a major bunch of demolition to the property. Again, this is on a case-by-case basis. There are versions of this now, another piece of pipe I'm going to show you, where this is not a liner whatsoever. This section of pipe has been coated. You can kind of see a slight difference. There's little, it almost looks like it's been painted on, because essentially it has. This is an example of a coating that was brushed on. This can be done with water and sewer pipe. This particular manufacturer makes a product that can go on in layers, and as it's built up layer by layer, it's applied with a brush. It actually builds up a structural coating. So in this case, there's no felt, it's just straight epoxy. So other versions of this can be done, again, on drain lines and on water lines. I wanted to show you these show and tell pieces just because I think they're cool. I think it's cool to see real live examples of what this looks like in the real world. The question is, if there's a bad section of pipe, whether it's cracked or there's a hole in it or it's even missing, what's the right application? So just like medical procedures are used to solve, these health complications, these different rehabilitation products are on the marketplace now and being used by contractors all over the country, from federal to municipal to private end users, to solve these kinds of complex plumbing problems. My takeaway from this that I want you to think about is that lining in all of its variations is essentially like placing a stent inside of an old pipe. In the case of my mother-in-law, what took place with her is they were able to spare her having open heart surgery. They scheduled her for an immediate procedure where they made an incision in her thigh, and these medical doctors slipped up through an artery in her leg to her heart, I think 5 different stents. These stents opened the blocked arteries and it restored flow of blood to the heart. That's what you're thinking about when we're talking about pipelining. You're essentially stenting a drain line. Okay, so back to the presentation. Okay, some of the comparing and contrasting differences between traditional pipe repair and pipe rehab or trenchless pipe restoration. In a traditional conventional pipe replacement, there's always going to be some demolition. Again, physically you have to remove the materials that are between the pipe and living space. There's always going to be some disruption to tenants and owners when you do a conventional repipe. Now, having said that, there are certain instances where conventionally replacing the pipe is the right thing to do. It may be the only thing to do. It may be more cost effective, and it may be a better fix in the long run. There is an instance, the reason I put this in here, just giving some thought to it. Every once in a while, conventional repiping creates a series of misfortunate events. So if you have a pipe that starts to fail in a building, one of the questions or one of the cautions is that by doing a replacement, it doesn't trigger other code upgrades. I won't tell you a bunch of horror stories that I have, but I know of buildings over the years, without being specific, that they opted to do conventional pipe repair, and in the process it exposed that they were in compliant problems with their fire system in the building, like their fire ratings, or they found there was electrical problems. All of these things are issues that can come up. So it's something just to be aware of. Again, there's a time and a place to replace pipe, but every once in a while it can create more problems than you're really wanting to encounter. And then again, repiping is sometimes not feasible because the pipes are literally inaccessible, meaning that you can't get to them. So a couple of final points here. Pipe rehabilitation solutions. When you're thinking of pipe rehab, comparing that again to conventional pipe replacement, you'll hear this word used a lot. If you read literature on this particular topic, you'll hear the word trenchless. So a trench is just digging a long ditch inside of a building or house. That is bad for most people because your floors are ripped up, the concrete's ripped up, or if it's through the yard, digging a trench, you got to think, if the pipe is 3 feet deep, there was a 3 foot deep hole dug on the day that pipe was installed. So to get to that old pipe, you got to dig a trench. So a lot of times we're talking about pipe lining or pipe splitting or pipe coatings. What we're talking about is an alternative to digging a trench. Again, the idea is that it's non-destructive. It's often less disruptive and much faster than traditional pipe replacement. Again, this is on a case-by-case basis. When you get into a high-rise building, of course, a traditional pipe replacement is a big deal. You're talking about opening up chases. You're talking about opening up common areas, unit by unit. It's an ordeal. Sometimes there's some portion of that that's going to have to be done. But one thing that's always associated with traditional pipe replacement is it's slow, it's time consuming, it's labor intensive. One of the benefits to rehab is it's relatively quick and painless. Of course, we've touched on this a few times, avoiding damage to buildings, landscapes, parking lots. You know, I didn't mention it, but there's a lot of pipe that runs under parking lots and in landscaping. If you've got big trees or bushes, that's also something that can come up if you have to trench. One of the ideas behind pipe rehab too is not waiting until the pipe is completely broken or the bottom is out or it's cracked, but it's a preventative measure. Something that can be done in advance of the pipe failing to extend the life, to now take a life that's pipe that's lasted for 30 years and extend its life another 30, 40, or 50 years without having to access it. And then finally, one of the primary benefits is that these different pipe rehab options don't require special access. Again, access is a fancy plumbing word for hole to get to the pipe. Okay, leaving you with some final thoughts. Seeing is knowing, right? We've said seeing is believing, a common statement, but just like in the medical profession, if your arm hurts and you get an x-ray, you can tell the difference between a fracture and a break. So with a camera inspection, you can identify the problems with the plumbing system and as a result, make educated decisions about how to proceed rather than just speculating, well, we think this is wrong, we think the pipe is here, we think this is what's going on. With the camera, the pipe's condition can be seen, it can be traced, it can be measured, it can be located, and all the questions are taken out of the equation. So a pipe condition assessment. A couple of words here you want to note. Basically what this is a professional diagnostic inspection. And camera inspections are important because they help you identify what the real problems are if your plumbing system's experiencing issues. Most plumbing problems don't develop overnight. They develop over years. They develop over decades. Thinking of buildings you manage or a building you might live in or work in, you might know right now of a reoccurring problem that happens with the plumbing system once a quarter, once a month, once every 6 months, once a year. That's how these problems tend to emerge. They emerge over time. And then they get worse to where the frequency between the events, floods, leaks, backups, it gets shorter and shorter till it's happening all the time. Whether you have scale buildup, root infiltration, or cracks, a high quality TV inspection helps to identify what's wrong, and it helps stakeholders, property managers, HOA board presidents, vice presidents, these people in charge, helps them make informed decisions regarding, you know, should we do some maintenance? Is it time to do some serious conventional repairs, replace things, or should we consider rehab or relining? Benefits of a professional CCTV inspection. And CCTV is another one of these acronym words. It stands for closed circuit television. Basically, it's just a camera on a reel. A camera inspection is important because it helps to verify the pipe material. It helps to confirm the location and the depth of the pipe. If it's underground, if it's in a wall. Identify exactly where the problems areas are at. Many times in a plumbing system when it has issues, it's not the whole system, it's certain hot spots in the pipe. And to prevent pipe emergencies. Again, preventative maintenance is a wise decision as a system ages. If you have a plumbing system that's over 25 to 30 years of age, it's now entering that window of time where these problem things we've discussed today become more of an issue. One of the things that camera inspection is good for is it can help you put together a maintenance plan, some kind of planning for the future. How are we going to tackle this? Are we going to start a reserve fund? Are we going to walk away? Are we going to move? What are we going to do, right? It helps you come up with a plan. And then, of course, the budgeting component. You know, when an emergency arises, there's nothing like being unprepared. It's miserable, it's horrible, whether it's a medical emergency or something breaks at the house. There's a hurricane in the Gulf right now, right? What's it gonna do? You know, but if you've got some supplies, if you've got some money set aside, it's not nearly as traumatic. Still, it's not fun, it's not what you want, but it's a lot better to be, you know, prepped and ready for something before it hits. So a brief overview of what we discussed today. of the non-destructive pipe rehab solutions. There are different lining options available for pipes from essentially 2-inch, even 1.5 inch, but definitely 2-inch to 36-inch when we're talking about the private side, private end users, condos, high rises, houses, commercial spaces. Spot repairs can be made, kind of like this one I held up. This would be considered a stent or a spot repair liner. It's short, from say 2 foot to 26-inch diameter pipe. Building drains and sewer drains are candidates. Roof drains are candidates. You have water mains and risers, as we discussed, the main trunk lines ranging in size from 2-inch to 12-inch. HVAC, heating, cooling pipes, even fire suppression systems are now candidates. And then, of course, we have different coating options for all these different things that we've kind of touched on today. So in closing, I've got 3 questions. I believe these appear in the handout, but these are more food for thought questions, or they're food for thought recommendations that might spur some questions. So if your property is over 25 years of age, whether you live there, manage it, or you're on the board, whatever the case may be, it's a really good call. I'm highly recommending that you consider beginning to set aside funds for a full-blown diagnostic inspection, or if you're ready, have one done. We talk about the time frame because when you cross that 30-year threshold, it's not a matter if, it's a matter of when there's going to be an issue. So getting a game plan, it's like getting that whatever 50-year checkup that you get on your body. What's at a car, 100,000 miles, you want to do a full system checkup. It's kind of like the same thing for a plumbing system. It's wise to consider implementing a program for preventative maintenance, for cleaning and coatings to inhibit corrosion, again, because corrosion is the cause of the problem, so that ultimately you can extend the life of your building systems. And then lastly, if you haven't started or you haven't considered this, start a reserve fund. Reserve funds are important for many different things that's required to maintain a building, but we find over the years, being in this industry, that a lot of different people don't have a line item for plumbing repair or plumbing system maintenance. So a reserve fund added money for that particular problem, should it arise, is a wise decision. Okay, that's going to conclude my portion today of the CEU. I want to thank you all for your time. I'll kind of turn it back over to Karen now. I believe we have some questions. We got about 10-ish minutes left.
Brandon, they have 3 questions on the chat, if you can look.
Okay, let me go to the chat. Okay, let's see. I see one here from Matt. What issues do you most frequently see with PEX piping? I notice a lot of the new buildings are using PEX. So I like PEX. I mean, personally, I don't have a problem with it. PEX, though, is like the grandchild of another type of pipe called polybutylene, which is horrible. If any of you have been in management or lived in a building long enough, back in the 90s, there was this huge litigation thing against polybutylene water pipe. Believe it or not, there's even still some buildings that have it. But polybutylene was like kind of one of the first variations of what we now refer to as PEX, which is like a flexible water pipe. And it would split and crack because it dried out. So PEX at large is widely used now, and there's a bunch of versions of it. There's PEX, there's Warsbo. It's really convenient for a plumber to use because they can install it quickly and efficiently. So your biggest cost in construction, regardless of the trade, is labor, right? It's rarely materials, that's a cost, but it's the labor that's required to do the work, whether that's framing or forms, concrete, block, plumbing, electrical, AC. And so the great thing about PEX is it can be installed fast and efficiently. It's very flexible. It can be ran kind of wild configurations. And it's got a good track record. As of right now, I don't know of any real major problems with PEX. So it's kind of like a lot of other things. When something emerges as the best, when you start to take in performance and price, PEX has kind of emerged as one of the top pipes used. Cpvc is a rigid plastic, that was used extensively from like 2000 to the last few years all throughout Florida. It's still very popular. They don't use it at all in the Midwest because it can crack and break when it gets exposed to freezing temperatures. But as a general rule, PEX has kind of become more predominant. I hope that kind of answers your question. Okay, a question from Laura. What are the pipes along the left ceiling and wall and ceiling to the right of the repair person? Older building when they did the external electric. Okay, so in that picture, if you look close, there's a variety of different pieces of pipe in that particular picture. There's some plumbing. I think there's some electrical. There's even some HVAC, I think drainage pipe. So that picture, kind of the more than the specifics of it, the intention of it is to show that there's a lot of different piping networks. And we've been talking about plumbing, but understand inside the walls, you have AC, you obviously have electrical, you have condensate drains. There's a variety of different wires, there's telephone. And so these are some of the things that come up during a repipe is sometimes where they put the plumbing, they put everything else too. So in Florida, it's fairly common to externally repipe things out where it's exposed or to build soffits because you physically can't put it back where it used to be because of other stuff that's in the way. So just kind of nuancy things about Florida construction in general. Is CIPP a preventative measure? From Janine. Yes, it would be considered a preventative option simply because you're inhibiting corrosion. So if you've got metallic pipe, copper, cast iron, galvanized, ductile steel, concrete, clay, all of them have their different weaknesses and strengths, but all of them are susceptible to corrosion and or shifting and moving. So CIPP is definitely considered a preventative measure. Let's see, I have another one, but I only see the first two letters. This is K. Is there a special license in plumbing to do the restoration or replacement? No, it's just a simple plumbing license. So pipe lining and rehab is now making its way into the plumbing code. And it's now something based on project size that is typically permitted. It depends on the jurisdiction, meaning the local governing authority. It depends on the state. So in some states, it's more regulated and kind of organized than in others. Florida's kind of in the middle. California's a little further along. Texas is down the road a ways. There's a lot of talk right now about adding a potential new license just for pipe rehab, but it keeps getting kicked back into falling under plumbing. It's kind of like, not to go into the weeds, but in some states, for example, if you are a licensed plumber, you also install gas piping. The licenses go together. In other states, they're separate licenses. So right now, pipelining and coating and rehab all falls under the umbrella of plumbing, but state by state, or even maybe like Ohio, it's every single county. I mean, they might make up different rules from place to place, but right now it's something that's permitted under the standard plumbing license. Let's see, any more?
There's one second bottom. Do insurers typically give you credit for rehabbing like they do with replacement of these cast iron pipes?
So yes and no, and it depends on the state. About 10 years ago in Texas, the insurance companies were literally covering full-blown repipe costs. If your house had a leak, they would just cover it under a policy. It was wild. And they gravitated very quickly, the insurance companies gravitated towards pipe rehab and lining because it was less money than the remodel cost to tear it all out. Now, what ultimately happened is a lot of the insurance companies almost went bankrupt in Texas, and they cut it off. They stopped covering claims for water and sewer problems. This is the way they killed it. But for like about a good 10-year run, if you had cast iron under the floor, they would pay for the rehab. And they thought they were getting a deal, which in effect they were, because the way the policies were written, they had to cover plumbing. In Florida, as a general rule, over the past 20 years, insurance policies will not cover pipe lining or really pipe repair. It's like this. They will cover for the leak to be found. They will cover for the leak to be exposed. And then they will cover for everything that was damaged to be fixed. If that makes sense. Like your cabinets, your floors, your walls. So insurance policies in Florida typically cover damages caused by the leak or a problem, but they don't touch the plumbing problem. I don't know if they partnered up with Texas or what they learned their lesson. Now, they kind of went hardcore, like the insurance companies kind of swung so far that they would cover nothing to do with plumbing. So they wouldn't cover a plumber, they wouldn't cover a lining, they wouldn't cover any of that. Some companies, company by company, they would say, hey, this is what we figured for your damages. This will, we figured for the cabinets, this, that, and the other. But once there is a settlement, on the policy delivered, a lot of people will opt to have pipe lining done because it's less expensive than ripping everything out. So it's kind of like an end user decision. But I don't know if you've seen these commercials. I think it's Morgan & Morgan and a couple other lawyers. They got wind of this and they are hunting this down hard right now throughout the state of Florida. They're going in and they're getting people full settlement reimbursements for having a leak, having a crack, and getting them huge sums of money, far more than it would cost to conventionally even do it. I've heard some shocking numbers, like, whoa. And so again, it's still in Florida kind of to the end user. They get to pick how they spend their money, but it's in most policies, it's not covered.
And I don't see any other questions, Brandon. So with that, I will say thank you so much for the presentation today. From the comments, it looks like everybody really enjoyed it. You made plumbing fun.
Okay.
So, and everybody else, thank you for participating today. Please send back your evaluation forms. And if you're registered for tomorrow's, the last webinar for tomorrow for the manager all day that we're scattering over 3 days, I did already send the link and the handouts and the evaluation forms. So you should have those in your inbox. Thanks, Brandon.
Thanks, Karen. Thanks, everybody.
Take care.